What's up, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with some more Dynasty Buy Low Players. I'm going to be giving you the players that you should buy right now before the rest of your league mates figure out that they're going to be the guys that are going to be learning them leagues for years to come. The last video that I put out on the Dynasty Buy Low Players did very well. Got over 160 views right now. It's been crushing it. So we decided to come out with part 2. If this video gets 5 likes or 20 views, I'll come back with part 3, or I'll come back with part 3 of Dynasty Buy Low Players. And if you are new to the channel and you like this video, hit the like button on this video, hit that subscribe button down below, and hit me up in the comments, and I will respond to all comments as always. Without further ado, let's get right into the Dynasty Buy Low Players. First up, we've got Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott just signed a new 4-year, $160 million contract with $126 million guaranteed. And not only is Dak locked into this situation for years to come, so are a lot of the very good skill position players around him, and that's why he is such a buy right now in fantasy football, coming off of that devastating leg injury he had. It looked awful, but all the doctors expect him to make a full recovery and be ready to go, locked and loaded by the beginning of this season. So I really don't think there's any reason to be down on Dak, and I think this is the only real opportunity you're going to get to buy Dak Prescott currently coming off this injury, because after this, I think he's just going to be straight NOS and really be a great fantasy football player for your roster. But yeah, like I said, let's look at the situation that he has. Amari Cooper signed a 5-year, $100 million deal last season. He's probably going to get cut next offseason if I had to guess. He's only a $6 million dead cap hit next year. Again, he's got a $22 million cap hit. So if I was a betting man, I'd say Amari Cooper probably gets cut next offseason or restructures his contract. But CeeDee Lamb is locked up. He just had his rookie year. He's got basically 3 to 4 more years of team control if they pick up that 5th-year option on him. So basically he's going to be here as long as Dak is going to be here. It's looking like. And CeeDee Lamb is an absolute stud. We didn't really get to see how good of a rookie season he had because Dak went down. He did play a lot of games with Andy Dalton. But CeeDee Lamb is a bona fide superstar and, going to give Dak that go-to weapon for years to come. And then let's look at what Dak has done already in the past. Last year in 2020, before Dak's injury, and throughout the season, Dak was number 1 player in fantasy points per game. Above Christian McCaffrey, above every quarterback, number 1. Nobody scored more points than Dak on a points per game basis. Even if they only played 1 game or 2 games, doesn't matter. That's how good he was. And in 2019, he finished as the QB2 overall behind only Lamar Jackson. So, Dak has been dominating for fantasy football for years. In 2019, when he finished as the quarterback 2, he only had 3 rushing touchdowns as well, and he's had 6 multiple years. He had 3 last year in only 5 games. So I expect that number to come up, and that number is going to come up on the year he finished as quarterback 2. He can have more rushing yards and more rushing touchdowns. That year he actually had a career low in rushing yards as well. If we look at his 2019 stats, he threw for almost 5,000 yards, 4,902 yards, and 30 touchdowns. And if we look at his 2020 pace that he was on before that injury, he was on pace for almost 6,000 yards, 5,939 yards, and 29 touchdowns, and almost 300 rushing yards. And like I said, he had 3 rushing touchdowns and only played 5 games and got injured in the third quarter of that last game. So if you really want to get nitpicky, he was well over 6,000 yards if I was going to extrapolate his stats, factoring in the quarter that he missed, quarter plus. But, and another thing that I want to bring up about the Cowboys defense is still MIA. They haven't been spotted in years, to be honest with you. They've really been struggling. Even they go out there and spend all 7 picks on defense, which they probably should do, pull a Carolina Panthers from last year. They're still not looking, 7 rookies. That's great, but they need coaching changes. They need a lot of things on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't expect them to get much better on that defense. They'll get better because they were awful last year. But, Dak is going to have to sling it. The game scripts are going to be ready for him to produce for fantasy for years to come. Dak isn't going to be cheap to acquire, but Dak is just a bona fide studs position, and this is the last chance you're going to get to buy him. So I would put an offer into Dak if I could, 1,000%. Let's move on to our next quarterback buy low, and it's actually an older quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Now, the reason he's on this list, Aaron Rodgers is the GOAT. He's the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Hit me down in the comments if you don't believe so, but you're wrong. Let's look at some stats. Coming off a great season, he had 48 touchdowns last year and only 5 interceptions, and that was without the Packers going out there and acquiring a number 2 weapon, really doing nothing to that offense to address any of the major needs that they had. Again, this season, maybe they'll go out and they'll get a receiver. I'm just saying it can't get any worse than what the Packers really did from a front office perspective for Aaron Rodgers last year. He had a good offensive line that played really well, but a lot of those offensive linemen are coming back. David Bakhtiari might be hurt to start the season. Corey Linsley signed with the Chargers, but the Packers have done a great job of developing interior offensive linemen. They drafted a bunch of guys late in the last year's draft in the later rounds, interior offensive linemen to develop for this exact situation. And they still have Elton Jenkins, who's a Pro Bowl left guard, and David Bakhtiari could be ready by the time the season starts or only miss a few games. So he's still going to have that offensive line intact. And honestly, I think this is the bigger point. If the Packers do decide to move on, who cares? Like I said, they've been giving him nothing to really work with weapon-wise besides Devontae Adams. I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I don't know who, like Mercedes Lewis, like they're just solid pieces, but they're not great pass catchers. So yeah, the Packers are not an ideal situation currently, and the reason that, let's look at some stats for Aaron Rodgers, what he's done. So everyone wants to talk about Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes is definitely great, but let's look at the touchdown to interception ratio for Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers since Patrick Mahomes entered the league. So Patrick Mahomes' career touchdown interception ratio is 4.75, meaning he throws 4.75 touchdowns for every 1 interception he throws, which is currently the highest all time for a career. But if you factor in that Patrick Mahomes is playing in an era where offense is much easier to play, and you look at the touchdown percentage for Aaron Rodgers since Mahomes has entered the league, Aaron Rodgers is 6.76 touchdowns per 1 interception. So he's just been dominating even in his older years. He's coming off an MVP season. I'm probably, you're thinking, how am I going to buy low on a guy that won MVP? It's because he's 37 years old. A lot of people think they're going to move on from him. He's ranked outside of a top 12 quarterback on some dynasty leagues, and that's where I just think, man, I look at a guy like Drew Brees, who played until he was, 41, 42 years old, and Aaron Rodgers currently 37 with a December 2nd birthday, I believe. It's at least a December birthday regardless, so he's basically got a whole another year till he turns 38. Man, and he's talked about wanting to play well into his 40s. I wouldn't worry about if he gets traded from the Packers or anything because, like I said, he's a stud by himself. As long as he goes somewhere that has, I don't think he's going to, Aaron Rodgers is not going to go to a team that's not ready to compete, if that makes sense, if the Packers do move on from him. Because it just doesn't make sense for him to go, to the Jets or something. He's not going to do that at 39 years old. He's going to go somewhere where he can win, where he can win a Super Bowl. Yeah, and so that's why I would buy Aaron Rodgers now, because I look at 3 years in advance in Dynasty, because I feel like after that you're really nitpicking and it's really difficult to do much longer than 3 years. I think you're going to get at least 3 or 4 more good years at Aaron Rodgers, and I think you could buy low on him because of the age and just the fact that people are a little, there's some uncertainty with him right now in the Packers, but I really would not worry about that too much because of how good of a player Aaron Rodgers is. And let's look at this. He also said he currently has 412 passing touchdowns for his career. And like I said, he's already talked about wanting to play into his 40s. He also said that he plans to hit 500 touchdown passes, which, I mean, if he's only going to play 1 or 2 more years, that's means he's throwing 40 a year or something like that. So I would definitely buy into Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's going anywhere soon. Moving on to our next player, we've got a running back, Austin Ekeler. Now, Austin Ekeler, the reason he's on this buy low list, I think he is CMC light. If you want to check out the video we did on the next Christian McCaffrey, that video I discussed this a little bit more in depth along with another player who I think could be the next Christian McCaffrey. That's a great video you can also check out on this channel. But let's look at Austin Ekeler's 2020 pace that he was on. So in 2019, when he finished as RB6 overall, he only had 132 carries and 92 receptions, I believe. But his pace in 2020, if he had played 16 games, he was on pace for over 200 carries and 94 receptions. So that reception baseline stayed pretty much the same, which is, elite pass catching numbers. Not many backs in football are catching more than 90 passes in a season. But if he gets anywhere close to that 200 carry mark, I mean, he is just going to be a beast for fantasy football. Even if he gets 180 carries, anything like that, with that reception work and how talented of a player he is, in the passing game, he's going to be absolutely magnificent for fantasy football in 2021 and moving forward. If we look at him in 2019, the year that Christian McCaffrey had 1,000 receiving yards, Austin Ekeler was actually graded out as PFF's highest graded pass catching running back, which I think is something to notice. He is just very, very dynamic with the ball in his hands. He always makes the first guy miss. And yeah, he's another guy you can just kind of buy low on a little bit because of that injury. I just don't think people really realize how good he is. He's a guy who could easily be in that first round conversation next year. And that's why I think he's a guy to go out and buy. Their O-line has improved. They signed Corey Linsley to the highest paid center contract in the NFL history. Corey Linsley was also PFF's highest graded center last year. And Austin Ekeler has a contract already in place that he's going to get the ball. He signed a 4-year, $24 million extension. Not this offseason, but the previous offseason. So he's locked and loaded. He's got Justin Herbert there. The offensive line is getting better, not worse, I don't think. It can't get much worse than it was last year. And he dominated last year still for fantasy football before he got hurt, and was solid once he came back, even though I don't think he was close to 100% yet. All right, moving on to our next player, we have Chris Godwin. And Chris Godwin's on this list because I think you have an opportunity to buy 80 cents on the dollar. He is a really young receiver, so you're going to have to pay for him, but he's also extremely dynamic. In 2020, he only had 82 targets in 12 games. I expect this number to go up drastically. He played 2020 also with a broken finger. He had surgery on that halfway through the season, was playing a lot of the years with it taped up. The reason I would say this is because he didn't really look like himself in 2021 or in 2020, to be honest with you. He's making, you can see here he's got his fingers taped up in that photo. Tom Brady said he's got the best hands of any player he's ever played with, which I mean is saying something. Tom Brady's played in this league 20 plus years with a lot of talented pass catchers. But he says Chris Godwin's the best. And we saw Chris Godwin dropping some passes and stuff once that injury happened. I really don't expect this trend to continue. He's going to come back and be fine in 2021. I expect him to get back to dominating. In 2019, he finished as the wide receiver 2 overall on only 121 targets and in only 14 games. So we don't need his target volume to go up astronomically for him to dominate in fantasy football. We just need that slight uptick. I think that could happen because Antonio Brown, I expect to leave in free agency. There's been rumors about him re-signing, but I don't know. If he comes back, it would definitely be a knock for Chris Godwin just because Antonio Brown is still a dominant receiver. He's still really good. So is Chris Godwin, but it's just another cook in the kitchen. But let's say AB leaves. Antonio Brown had 62 targets in 8 games, which might not sound like a lot, but to put that in perspective again, Chris Godwin only had 82 targets in 12 games. So I think there are more targets coming Chris Godwin's way in 2021 and just moving forward. He's a young receiver who's extremely talented, and he's a guy I would be looking to buy just because he's coming off of kind of a down year, and I firmly expect him to be, a wide receiver 1 in 2021. I think he's going to get right back to dominating like he was. All right, next up we have Devoe Samuel. Devoe Samuel, he's an issue for defenders after the catch for sure. He is one of those guys who gets the ball in all kinds of different ways, gets in the receiving game and the running game. His rookie year, he had 961 scrimmage yards, which is a good amount. And also last year, he was injured some, but he was still on pace for 953 yards last year. So similar to what he did his rookie year, even though he's banged up and playing through injuries and not finishing all those games. Deebo is an athletic freak, though, and that's why I think you got to buy on him now. He's currently ranked 2 as wide receiver 33 in Dynasty leagues, or lower. Most of the places I see him, I just think that's too low for a guy who's as young as he is. It's going to be his 3rd year in the league. You can make the argument he's the number 1 receiver on the San Francisco 49ers. It's either him or Brandon Ayuk, and he's been there a year longer, so I expect it to be him. He's utilized heavily in that offense. Let's look at some of his athletic numbers. So at the Combine, he ran a 4.48 40-yard dash, which is an 86.5 percentile for a receiver his size. And he also weighed in at 214 pounds, only 5'11". So he's a compact frame. He had a 39-inch vertical as well, which is 90th percentile for wide receivers. The guy is an athletic freak for sure, and they get the ball into his hands in space, and he makes people pay as well. He's one of those guys, he'll run you over too. Some of his teammates compared him to a legendary wide receiver. Trent Williams was actually talking about him in an interview, and he was saying how his contact balance is some of the best he's ever seen, not just for wide receivers, but for anybody. And so he reminds him of a young Percy Harvin, which is saying a lot just for, how good. And it's just like, I don't think people are really see him in that light. And Trent Williams was going on and on about how great of an athlete he is. And Trent Williams is one of the best athletes in the NFL to begin with. So the fact that he's that amazed by Deebo definitely makes you sit up and straight and say, okay, if this other NFL freak is talking about how freaky this wide receiver is, and I can buy him at his early years still, he's only going into year 3, and I can get him outside of a top 30 dynasty wide receiver, this is a guy I would absolutely love to acquire, and he might be the wide receiver 1 for the San Francisco 49ers going forward. But yeah, let's put this in perspective too. His rookie year, he only played 15 games, he missed 1, but he finished as wide receiver 29 as a rookie. So if you're getting him outside the top 30, I feel like you're getting good value there. I expect him to only improve. I don't expect, hopefully the injuries aren't going to keep him out, but football's a dangerous game. Anyone could get hurt. You can't just because he got banged up 1 year doesn't mean he's an injury-prone player. I know he's, but yeah, I expect Deebo with that frame, and his play style is worrying, but if he gets that heavy of a utilization, he's going to be a star for fantasy in the games that he plays. If you guys like this video, please hit that like button down below. Helps us out a lot. Leave your comments down below. I'll respond to all comments. And if you like the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Excuse me. Until next time, I'll see you guys. It's Fantasy Joe. Peace out.